Boom. And we are live. Hello everyone, and whatever the fuck Maxis is. Today we're going to be talking about Theodore Bundy, also known as Ted Bundy, to all you murderous enthusiasts out there. So, Ted Bundy is one of America's most foremost, what would you call it, looked up, researched, but he's not the most interesting of serial killers, but he is the most charismatic, if you would.
He's like the Blackbeard. He's the Blackbeard only ever took down 3 British Royal Navy ships, but still has he's the most marketable serial killer in American history.
He's incredibly charismatic, and arrogant in his later interviews. So
he was arrogant before then.
Oh, gotcha. So the people talking about Ted Bundy as a kid, they said usually they're like, "Oh yeah, he's lovely, he's a great guy." Blah. No, not these people. They turned around and they said that Ted Bundy had killed animals. He was really, really inappropriate with his friends. Like, he, at a young age, he was weirdly sexual with him. Which really fucking led into his later on, like, oh, we have a comment. Hey, John, good to see you, buddy.
Oh, nice.
So, Ted Bundy was born in 1946 in Vermont, which explains everything.
Oh.
Hey,
Gorilla.
Hey, Gorilla, man, good to see you. Now, he had murdered up to 36 women and children. Like, now, if you were talking about his childhood, hi, Miss Martin, good to see you. But you wanted to talk a bit about his childhood?
Well, okay. There was nothing remarkable about his childhood per se, but I feel like it says something about maybe his state of mind growing up. Now, hold on a second. So, he was born, like you said, Burlington, Vermont. But the thing is, his mother had deeply religious parents.
Mm-hmm.
So Ted was born illegitimate. And in fact, to this day, his birth certificate says father unknown. Nobody knows who the fuck his father was. So his deep religious grandparents were probably not going to be especially happy about this. So in order to try to cover it, she went to a home for unwed mothers. This was a thing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And gave birth to Ted. And then to try to basically avoid bringing shame to the family, they had him... how to explain this? Basically to hide it from everybody else around them in the community. They claimed he was the adopted son of her parents. So they claimed he was adopted by his grandparents to cover what had happened. Now later his mother did remarry and moved to Tacoma, Washington. This was in 1951 and married a guy named Johnny Bundy. Now,
which is where he gets the name.
Yeah, that's where he got the name from. But the thing is that Ted, even back then, didn't like his stepfather. And you would think, okay, yeah, most kids have an issue with a step-parent, in one way or another. It just happens. It's not my real father. But the thing is, Ted never knew who his real father was. Nobody did. And his issue came from, on record, he resented his stepfather for being too uneducated and being of the working class. This is before he was even an adult.
Yes.
The man has a massive issue with his ego and narcissistic tendencies, which unfortunately a lot of killers do. I'm sorry, my shirt is all screwed up.
That's fine.
But the point is that we've laid the tracks here. He's always been a psychotic, snob.
Well, yeah, it was born of narcissism. The whole thing, his whole idea that he was better than others. because this guy's family was fine. They were a working class family, but none of them had a massive issue with each other, apart from him disliking his stepfather. There was no abuse. There was no fucking, like, none of the weird shit you see with some people who take this path later in life. He had a completely functional family. And in fact, this asshole actually graduated from, I forget which college, but he graduated from he was a psychology grad. This fucking went and got a degree in psychology. And then
explains
was in
how
law
he had
school.
so many victims. Because he could get it into their heads.
Yeah, well, he's smart. The problem is he was smart, but he was so smart that he just decided that everyone else was stupid. And that's where I go with his narcissism, with his ego, because that's ultimately kind of what got him screwed. Because he decided it would be completely okay for him to tell somebody about some of the shit he was involved in.
Yeah, I mean, some of the early stuff, like someone said that they had found him after mutilating a cat.
No, it wasn't cats, it was mice.
Mice, yeah.
He was dismembering mice.
Why would... Yeah, but someone said that they found him by a cat and he was just staring at it.
I've never seen that account anywhere. Personally, it doesn't mean somebody didn't say it, but I've never seen it.
It was on the Netflix thing.
Well, the Netflix thing is permeated with errors from everything I've seen and heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But with
now, there is a book written by a guy named Matt DeLisi. He was a criminologist.
Yeah.
And he was the one who denoted the thing about him literally taking mice apart in the woods. But he was also known for attempting to drown people. If people were swimming or boating, he would attempt to drown them. And basically it was said that he showed, literally even back then, no sign of remorse, guilt, embarrassment, or shame of any kind for what he had done.
To his execution interview, like, there was no remorse in it. And
it was the University of Washington, by the way, 1972. And then he went to law school in Utah, but he didn't finish it.
And he also went and studied Chinese as well, and didn't finish that either. Like, so
now, one thing they say may have influenced, not necessarily his killing spree, but the nature of his victim selection, was his first full-on girlfriend, his first steady girlfriend. Do you know about that one?
No, I've only heard about his wife, but not his girlfriend.
Okay, so Diane Edwards, he met at the University of Washington when he got a psychology degree.
Yeah.
She was rich, she was very pretty, and basically she was kind of everything he felt he should have, which was money, class, and influence. She was almost the embodiment of where he wanted to be. But then she broke up with him. Now, he never went after her, but after that, the pattern, because shortly after this is when he started kind of going after very specific girls. They were always very attractive, and they always had long hair, and it was almost always dark hair. Yes. And that was all similar to this girl that actually left him.
Okay. I mean... He was obsessed with his first girlfriend. He was already... Like, you'd have to start asking questions why this man wasn't institutionalized. I mean, when he was, like, in 1974, one of his first victims was Karen Sparks. He entered into her basement, right? Mm-hmm. And so, when he was there, like, this girl, she was a dancer. Ted Bundy knew her, but she had also broken up with him.
And I'm going to tell you, part of the reason why he was investigated right away had to actually do with the way he did things.
Okay.
In about the mid-1970s, after he'd done all his college stuff, he basically kind of pushed himself into the kind of person I feel like he kind of imagined himself to be. Influential, confident, socially active, even kind of nudging into politics. He was well known enough that he had a letter of recommendation from a Republican governor because he was helping him work on his campaign.
What? Yeah, he was wasn't Ronald Reagan, but he was a local Republican, like Agent Sparks. So that's how one person wrote 50 Shades of Grey.
I
got her
mean,
That was a fucking.
Yeah.
and here's the thing: like you're talking about his early, Karen,
Yeah.
his early killing, but one of the biggest discrepancies and one of the biggest points of contention is when his first murders actually were, because supposedly 74, which I believe is the one you actually mentioned specifically, is his first, and this is at the point when women in Seattle and Oregon actually had gone missing. And in fact, there was another one about one of the victims who they never substantiated had last been seen by somebody who matched his description. But that same criminologist, Matt DeLisi, argued that he thought that Bundy had murdered more than 100 people. And he felt that his killing had actually started in his adolescence.
Which makes
a quote here.
sense.
There's actually a quote here. Bundy drops a lot of clues that there were way more murders. He later explained that authorities were woefully unequipped to track Bundy, and the quote continues. The pacing and confidence with which he's killing between 1974 and 78 indicates that there's no way he had just started.
No. I've heard that, like, more than a few times, and people who I have spoken to who are elderly, they had said, like, they had all turned around and when he was arrested for the first time and they're like bringing up 74 and that, they had all said no, he was the skill that he was doing things with.
Hey, Thomas Potts.
Denotes practice.
And you know, it wasn't actually his wife that got him into so much trouble. And the most, I want to say, unsettling thing about Ted is that Ted was completely capable of maintaining a semi-normal relationship.
Yes.
Because before the woman who his wife married him while he was in prison.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a girlfriend before that, and she's actually the one that got him into trouble. Elizabeth Klopfer, I think that's how you pronounce that. It's either Klopfer or Klopfer. But she was his girlfriend. She had 2 kids. She met him in a bar in Seattle in 1969. They were dating for 6 years.
Is she the mother of his child?
No. That the wife is the mother of his child, and there's some dispute on how that happened because he was in prison at the time. They think he bribed some of the guards for private time during her conjugal visits.
Wow.
But anyway, Elizabeth Klopfer, they were dating for 6 years. In 74, again, around the time of that first officiated murder, she started having suspicions. And when she asked him why he was doing strange things like keeping a meat cleaver in his desk, he would just kind of find a way to talk her out of it or around it. But eventually she got sick of it and she went to the cops in 74. But because of Bundy's influence in the community and the good reputation he had, the cops didn't believe it. So they kind of let it ride. They didn't believe, they figured maybe she was being paranoid or suspicious because of the murders.
Yeah.
No dice. But in 75, she went back again to them. Because Ted did something really dumb. And here's the thing. He probably didn't think it was dumb because of what he assumed his higher intellect than everyone, that no one was going to do.
Yeah, he believed he was a genius.
He also, and he was smart. Not to lower that. He got away with it for so long because he was, but it's also what fucked him. Mm-hmm. Basically, in 75, and this was the first time, one of the times he got put in prison before his actual conviction for the murders, right? He was in prison. He called her and confessed that he had attempted to kill her at one point at their home.
Why would you do that?
He confessed
because he thought he was untouchable.
Yeah, he confessed from his cell that he had literally tried to kill her and said he couldn't resist his impulses when he felt, and here's the quote, his sickness building in him.
Yeah, I've used that excuse, but that's usually when I'm clinging onto the toilet.
Then that's not an excuse. Then. But Yeah, that's when she actually broke ties with him, when he literally admitted that, and she went to the cops again.
Fucking hell. Like, and from everything I've seen, like, when Ted Bundy was on trial, he was his own lawyer.
Mm-hmm. The first time.
Yeah.
But you know,
Like,
that's how he escaped.
Oh? No, I'm not familiar with how he actually escaped. I just know he did.
Okay, so in 1975, he got arrested for kidnapping Carol DeRange, okay? She was one of the few women who got away from him. So he got a 1 to 15 year jail sentence for the kidnapping. That's when he called up his girlfriend and admitted that shit, was when he was serving time for that sentence. But in 1977, when they were indicting him on murder charges for a Colorado woman being murdered, that was when he said he was going to act as his own lawyer. On the way to the courthouse library, he manages to jump his ass out a window and bail. On his way to the courthouse. It took him 8 days to find him again.
You see, if I was on the run, like, in that era, right, where there's not CCTV everywhere, I, being so close to Canada, 8 days, get my ass to Canada.
Well, it's not
Never
even,
come
that's
back.
even the worst part. So they capture him, right?
Yes.
December, the same damn year, December 1977, he fucking escaped again. This fucker dug a hole in the ceiling of his cell and literally starved himself so he could lose 30 pounds so he could wriggle his skinny ass through the hole in the ceiling of his cell.
That's
yeah,
dedication.
I'm definitely not getting through a hole in the ceiling.
They didn't even realize he was gone for 15 hours.
Holy crap, that's one hell of a head start.
Well, don't forget though, in a lot of prisons and things like that, because now we use CCTV, they had guards on rotational shifts.
Yeah.
So if you were asleep, no, Thomas, I'm not on the run. They caught me.
And here's the stupid thing: after he bailed in December 1977,
yeah,
he did leave. He went to Tallahassee. That's where the fucking Chi Omega murders happened that got him caught.
Now, from what people have been saying about the murders and things like that, he liked to collect the body parts. Like, some people have been saying he liked to collect heads. Other people, now, without going into who they were, if you know, look it up yourself. He'd have forced sexual relations, is how we're going to say it.
It's public record of the names. You're not going to hurt anything by saying
No. No, it's what they did. It's just I don't want to say who to, if you get me.
FSR right? For short.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did FSR to his victims, adult and children, both alive and dead.
Do you remember how he actually got caught? Like the evidence that basically fucked him.
What? How did he get caught? Because over this way,
fucking brazen asshole left bite marks.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
He left bite marks on Lisa Levy. So basically, that's a fingerprint. On-spot dental records. Yeah, he left bite marks, and there were multiple bite marks on this woman.
Oh my God, that is literally, man. They're like, oh, cool, we gotcha.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, now, this has been going around for years. This is just a story now. Because I do not believe this happened. But it's just, one of those urban legends that came out. They said that there was this girl. And now she's after being brought up in 6,000 shows about him, right? They go to an apartment and they're like, oh yeah, you escaped Ted Bundy. And she's like, yeah, he forced himself on me, but baby, he can come back anytime.
Now, he was well known to have had one that got away from him, but I guarantee you she didn't say that.
No, but I'm just saying there's stuff going around him that are genuine lies, like this woman.
It's the sensationalism of the whole thing. It became this pop culture thing because he was such a big quote unquote celebrity, because he did have charisma, he did have intelligence, and his popularity did come about by and large when he started appearing in the courtroom.
Well, because he was like
seeing him.
He was like a cross between a soap opera villain and a supervillain from a comic book. The guy had, he seemed to always be several steps ahead. He, like you said, he carried himself, very charismatically. Yeah. He believed himself to be untouchable. Mm-hmm. And that's after, and of course, it actually gets worse after he escapes twice, because then he really feels like even if they can touch him, they can't keep him. Yeah. So he gets more brazen, more bold. Bear in mind, he had a psychology degree. He was really good at playing people. Really
he
good.
Also studied Chinese, so he's got an ear for languages.
And the impulse issue is another thing, because here's the thing. Now he initially got caught because of Levy, the bite marks on her body. But okay. So the break-in into Chi Omega happened on January 14th of 78, right?
Yeah.
Kimberly Leach, who's the 12-year-old that he murdered, that was February 9th.
Yes.
So even knowing that what was going on, he still just, he couldn't resist. He just had to.
No, and... as he said in his execution interview, he called it his sickness.
Yeah.
He could feel it bubbling, building, rising. And all this stuff. They held him for 10 goddamn years. But he got sentenced to death twice. Right? Which is a sentence I never understood. That's a final sentence once.
It's mostly meant so that they can't wiggle out of it. It's symbolic, and it's also meant sometimes in extreme cases to be so they can't wriggle out of the entirety of a life sentence by contesting one. You've still got another life sentence on you.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm talking about the execution.
Oh.
Yeah, he got 2 executions.
Which, that's just, it had to have been symbolic in that point, because there's nothing to that.
I wonder if...
And by the way, I will tell you, the holding of 10 years, that wasn't by choice. He was convicted in 79. He was appealing that for 9 years.
Yes. This I'm aware of. He kept appealing. And towards the end, he kept trying to bribe all the different governors who were passing through. I can help you with more murders. I can help you. I can solve more crimes. Which is basically him saying there's more of my victims out there.
And as fucked up as it is, Leach, the 12-year-old, that's what actually made the death sentence stick. Because the one he'd been appealing repeatedly was for the 3 girls from the campus. Mm-hmm. It was the murder of the 12-year-old that actually got him the death sentence.
And that's the one who he was having... What was it, Bubba?
FSR.
FSR?
FSR.
Who he was having FSR with. Her corpse before she was a corpse, during the dying process, and after. And he kept some bodies that were there until they were so rotted that even some animals wouldn't even take it. Some of these bodies were so rotted. That's when he dumped them.
But, the thing is, he was convicted in 80 for the death sentence for Leach.
Yes.
But they still didn't take him to the chair until 89.
Because of all this fucking...
He was still trying to appeal the case. He even tried to take it to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
He claimed he could give them information on the unsolved murders he was involved with, hoping that would serve as an appeal to avoid the death sentence and just get life in prison.
Nah, they were going to lock it. They were going to send his ass straight to hell. Which... Now, this is something else I have realized from the previous murders that we've talked about, right? is they all last 5 years. That seems to be the max that you get before something goes wrong.
Well, or you get sloppy. I honestly think it's a matter of overconfidence.
Yeah.
It
You
is.
can only do this for so long before you start, like Bubba said, feeling like you can't be stopped. And the more confident you are, the more you tend to slip up if you're not paying attention.
There was an Irish serial killer back in the day, and when they caught him and everything, it's like they're like, just before they sent him to the gallows, they're like, do you have anything to say? And he's like, I've been doing this for 30 years. It was about time. And they're like, wait, we knew you've been doing this for 2. How many murders have you committed? And he went to the gallows, they said, laughing.
Yeah. Well, because that was his last moment. That was his last moment to get his lick. He knew they were going to have to sit there once he was dead and never have the answers they wanted.
That's interesting, Philip. Ted Bundy left 3 bodies near me. I drove by there in driver's ed. The driver's ed instructor pointed out where the 3 women's bodies were found.
Yeah, that figures.
Yeah. A lot of people were like, tend to be like, oh, look at this, look at that. Like, this is like where all the big things are.
Well, and bear in mind, there is a difference between being responsible for somebody's death and outright murdering them. So when you're talking about in the case of a 30-year, serial killer, there's any number of ways he could be getting that number. In Bundy's case, we're talking about how it took practice and how he was definitely, well versed in this long before he was quote unquote active. He had probably been building up to this for quite some time. There are probably plenty of near misses, plenty of, I want to know how many injuries his stepfather sustained just during his childhood.
Given Ted, given his proclivities, I don't think he would have done anything in his own home.
I got to say something weird. I would have asked his girlfriend what about his supposed kinks, because the chokings, the violent sex plays and things like that may have been him practicing.
As near as I can tell, that didn't get discussed very much, and probably for good reason.
Of course, of all the things to practice for. Well, as fucked up as it is, honestly, killing people's not that easy. Like, I mean, you can't. A lot of it, like, from what everyone says, is the first time these serial killers like go and kill someone, they're shitting their pants, right? Second time they go and they kill people, they're like horny as all hell. It's a lot of these people have it to do with sex for some weird fucking reason.
Well, and desensitization, it takes practice. You can't. There's nothing like that you can just go and do. That's not something a normal person has proclivity for. And I'm not saying he was ever normal, but even people with those proclivities have to build up to it.
Every human being has the ability to kill something, to kill someone. The issue is being aware enough of it that you don't do it, that you don't.
Of course.
And then on top of that, you have to have the will to bring yourself to the point to do it, and to know what you're doing takes further will, because it means you have to have some inclination. You have to have trained yourself or learned it somehow. It's all, you have to have had the intent. It doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, I mean, looking in my own country's history, reading about like history and things, during the Civil War, when brothers had killed brothers, they were drunk. They'd break into the house like straight up like drunk and things like that, or else there's in a case down in Port Law where during the Civil War where someone said to the brother, put your mask on. So you wouldn't have to look at his face. Normal people don't have that, but other people, like Ted would have sex with heads. He would turn these people's remains into sex toys.
Yeah.
I mean, for people who have them, there's no issue in having toys.
Well, there's a reason that necrophilia is a thing that's recognized, that it has, science behind it, because it's a thing that's been done enough times that someone had to take notice and figure out what the hell was it. Why were people doing this?
A lot of the psychology in the 80s was like shit. I'd wonder what had happened if Ted was alive now. Like, I mean, of course there'd be 10,000 Netflix documentaries on him.
Well, think about this though. We've had psychos that, what about that homeless guy that was killing people that they were doing the?
Oh God, yeah, we talked.
I mean, but that's what I'm talking about. People will always sensationalize stuff. There will always be somebody that's a little too soft-hearted to do what needs to be done. That will always advocate for the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is that technology now, if you do something, anything, and it's been like this in my entire adult life. If I'm 32 years old, and if I did something, from my late teens up to now, the whole world with a single internet search would be able to find it. And that wasn't like that back then. You could do anything. You could change your appearance just a little bit and nobody would know you from the next guy.
Well, that's why that criminologist cited that the resources the police had access to were shit.
Oh, yeah. Like, legitimately, there was one criminal. This was a guy who lived in the forest. Now, he wasn't a murderer, but he was, like, a criminal. When he decided to go straight, right, he cut his hair and shaved off his beard and took off his camos. And everyone's like, where is he? And he was on his own, like, searches for his own body. And nobody knew it was him. Like, stuff in the 80s was like, really? And I don't mean to say this for people who lived in the 80s. Primitive?
Okay, well, here's the thing. The 80s was a transitional point in technology.
Yes, they were only starting to get in computers.
Well, because the thing is, from the 80s to the 90s is the point where a lot of the biggest technological leaps actually took place.
Yeah.
So that period of time, more criminal sciences were slowly coming into being. Computers were getting more advanced. The problem is that Ted started his bullshit in the 70s. When a lot of it didn't exist.
Bear in mind, the reason why it didn't work for Ted any longer, the reason why that rope finally, came to an end, is because they had learned everything they needed from him by then. Mm-hmm. They could solve other murders. They're still solving his murders. They don't need him anymore.
You want to know what's a fucked up thing that police actually do? They actually, like these profilers, they need these killers to keep killing. They're like, I need him to do it one more time or two more times and we'll know exactly what's going on.
It's an unfortunate element of criminology and forensics also, is that to determine a pattern that they're not familiar with, they unfortunately have to have more information. And it's kind of the double-edged sword of the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, when I was going on vacation and I got my fingerprint scanned because of an incident when I was a teenager and I cut the tips of all my fingers, right? The guy scanning me said, haha, you're really easy to find because I've got unique fingerprints. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's funny. But the thing is, it's like, it's also good to know of how easy nowadays people are to find. Like, if Sammy went missing, it'd take us about 3 months to tell anyone.
Angie Burke says hello.
Hey! Who's Sarah? Okay, but hi, welcome anyway. So, okay, we'll just hop to the death to his execution interview.
Did you,
In 19
you didn't want to get into Carol Ann Boone?
Oh, okay, we'll get into Caroline. You want to do it?
Okay, February 1980. He married Carol Ann Boone. Now, this was a mother of two, so this was another woman with kids that he was messing around with. It's the second one, if you think about it. She married him in the courtroom during the penalty phase of his trial. They literally convinced, because there was a judge present, they convinced them to perform an in-court marriage for them.
That's fucking stupid.
Because they met 6 years before that, because they were both working in the Department of Emergency Services in Olympia when he lived in Washington.
Yeah. Well, and bear in mind, the reason why they would let that happen, Revan, is because there weren't any laws against it, and as weird as it is and unsettling as it may be, they figure what's the harm that can really come of it. And they also think, at the time, they naively thought that if he had somebody he was attached to like that, he might behave a little bit better in prison.
And here's the hilarious thing about that. Yeah, I was going to get to that. Apart from the fact that he had two stepkids, these two have a daughter. While Ted was in prison in 1982, 2 years into that sentence, Ms. Boone gave birth to a daughter in 82. And she named Ted as the father. Now, this was questioned multiple times because he wasn't allowed conjugal visits in prison. One of Ted's co-workers, Ann Rule, who's the one who also wrote one of the books about him, said that she believed that Bundy had managed to bribe the prison guards into letting them have some private time at least once.
Thing is, where would he get the money from it? Because
he had
what
resources.
was his actual job?
He'd been working multiple jobs. He wasn't.
And he had built up influence. Yeah. He had built up influence over the times. Similar, we talked about H.H. Holmes, how he, how he built up his influence and his standing in the community. Bundy had he had resources upon resources hidden away.
Because when he escaped prison in 1977. That gave him a couple years to build up a reputation somewhere else. And this was something he was unfortunately good at, was building little social circles.
Which, and the thing back then, and sadly this is a thing that I've noticed with American politics. If you're in a political circle, I mean, working-wise, right? Everyone all immediately thinks you're a great guy.
Yes and no. That's not as true as it used to be. There's a lot more criticism.
Especially back then.
Connections. But back then, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Favre, have you looked on YouTube at the poll?
Oh, I see him. Well, I didn't look at a poll.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a poll going on, Favre.
What have you done now?
Fun.
It's not there for me. So, oh, wait, there it is. Are you guys fucking serious?
Yeah.
Very funny, asshole.
What does it say?
The poll says, did Ted Bundy deserve to be executed? 69%, 69 says yes. 0 says no. 0% says thinks that Geek Hero is the secret serial killer. But 31% of the viewing audience believe that Favre is a werewolf, and God help us.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, with Favre being a werewolf and everything like that. Exactly, Maxis. thank you everyone for doing the poll. These interactions do help the channel. And also the jokes in the poll do tend to help break up the seriousness and heaviness of a lot of topics. Which is why I put in the joke answers.
True. And yeah, Philip Blair, that's reasonable. Considering you want to see an instance of that, yeah, look no further than Canada.
Oh, which prime minister? There's a bucket of them.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh yeah. Oh the current dude. Got it.
The one that a bunch of housewives voted for because they thought he was hot. And I still don't see it. I don't know what the hell they were looking at.
Did I misspell werewolf?
Maybe. I didn't really look that close.
No, I spelled it right. You fuckers. My audience play me like a fiddle. But
No, you definitely spelled it wrong.
Ooh.
Listen here, you fucking shovel.
Shovel? What?
That is not the garden tool that one usually. Never mind.
Mm-hmm.
No! That took me too long to get to that.
That's because in this world, it's psychopathic people that can actually be the interesting ones. Actually, and Angel, there's an actual thing where there was this guy, and he was a genuine psychopath, and he went into a shrink's office. And you know the test, are you hearing people or seeing people? He's like, what do you mean? I'm not seeing none. Never heard of this. I have no idea what you're talking about. But he was like crazy as fucking bedamned. But he said, if you can play the psychiatrists, then you're playing the law. He said, that's all you need to do is you need to practice playing the psychiatrist.
It's not wrong. And this may be a contentious thing to some people, but I feel that honestly, sociopathy is a much more dangerous element of people than psychopathy is. Because
it can be so much harder to spot.
Exactly. Sociopathy has so many different ways that it can manifest in a person's behavior.
But the thing about sociopathy, sadly, is at the moment, it's been hailed nearly. It's like a fad. Sherlock Holmes, with Benedict Cumberbatch, the TV show, right? He says he said, I'm not a psychopath. I'm a high functioning sociopath. Get it correct.
And that is one of the dozens of fucking standing issues with modern media.
Because they're glorifying evil traits.
Yeah. Some of the worst elements get played up to fucking get people to watch. I'm not saying it's a big thing. I'm not trying to say that it's to blame for a bunch of shit. I'm saying that the media, they like to play with it to their own benefit rather than acknowledge it for what it is more often than not.
Like, in the show, one of the things I've seen, actually, weirdly enough, speak against it, is Lucifer, the TV show, right? When the devil was talking to someone who he's about to basically lock in them a hell loop, he's like, you're a sociopath. He said, it's not going to be like one of these cushy TV shows. And he's like, oh, and what are you going to do? He goes, you're going to be your own victims. He said, and you're going to kill yourself, he said, for all eternity. Okay, bye. And just walks out, and you see him stand there as a 15-year-old girl from earlier in the episode, just looking up. And it's like, come on, Sophie, you have to get to school, and run down. Right.
Angie, that's probably not a bad way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, will we talk about his interview?
Briefly, we're already at the 44 mark.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap it up. So, in his interview, Ted Bundy was hitting up all the buzzwords of the late 80s.
Oh, yeah.
He was playing this, he was basically playing as Philip pointed out, the Satanic Scare. He was like playing up the rise of MTV.
Multiple times he was trying to cite pornography,
hardcore, softcore.
Mm-hmm.
Starting off as softcore and then going to
and then later in the interview, then he tries to transition it to violence in the media being a contributing factor, and he's trying to sell it like this is some great thing he's telling them that's going to be super useful, because he was just trying to use it to his advantage to justify his actions, even on his way to what he knew was his death.
Yeah,
it felt like he was just trying to justify it.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, there was one or two questions where it looked like he was genuinely aroused. And if you notice, like, he went from playing with his hands as normal to, like, really delicately moving his fingers in a very precise way. Like, he was constraining all his fingers. Like, the way he moved them so they wouldn't be moving out of place. And his interview was not about, I'm sorry about what I done, I'm an evil person, my interview is not, like, I'm going to bring peace to the family, here's where the bodies are, I hope you get peace, blah, blah, blah.
Most of his interview was about justifying his actions.
All his interview was about, like, justifying.
He had one point where he went on some odd diatribe that was very brief and difficult to follow, but it just kept coming back to, well, I'm not saying this is why I did this, but this is probably why I did this.
Yeah, I did this for, okay, I do believe he was doing a sensory control. When he was doing it, was because he was thinking about what he wanted to do. Yes, because his hands, Angie, his hands were actually in handcuffs, which means he had limited movement. And Farf, he would be in max, if I'm correct.
Oh, he would have been in max. Death row. Death row is its own.
Which means that his hands were also restrained to his waist, and also the table. So he was restrained 3 times. I mean, honestly, from what
especially given how many times he had escaped.
Yeah.
But from what people have been saying and looking at the body language and things like that, do you think he wanted to kill the guy?
It's plausible, but I think he also knew that it wasn't going to happen. There was no way. And here's the thing. Even if he had managed to get out of there, if you were looking at any kind of the crowd from the official footage, he wouldn't have got far if anybody saw him leaving.
Yeah, Phil, he escaped twice in 1977.
Yep.
And actually, and Angie, his sorry, I'm not used to prison terms, but his interview took place in the main catering area where the seats are in general population. That's where his final interview had taken place with, and the guy who he was talking with, because another stall tactic came from California. Mm-hmm. Well, he was executed in Vermont. So then he was also talking with this guy for a few days, and he's like,
quick answer to a question. Philip Blair, he did not have any help escaping. He pulled both of those off himself. The first time he was representing himself in court and managed to slip through a window and basically run. And the second time, he had managed to carve a hole in the ceiling of his cell, dropped 30 pounds, and managed to squirm his way through the ceiling.
Yeah. So, okay, so Angie now says, yeah, he was outside of his cell, he was locked down, shackled, and freaking bolted to the ground or the table. Actually, from what I have seen, I think he was bolted to the stool, because the stools are welded to the floor and are round, so they wouldn't have needed to bolt him to the floor, just tie him to the stool.
It's also important to remember that the other prisoners would have killed him.
Yeah.
He was not getting out of there alive.
If he had
No.
gotten out of the prison, the crowds would have killed him. There was a massive crowd built up waiting for his execution.
700 people
Yeah.
waiting. But, guys, it is getting very late for all of us. So, we've been going for like nearly an hour. Do you want to tell about your book, Farv?
Oh, sure. As a matter of fact.
I got this.
Oh, he's got it this time. Okay. I was going to reach for the one behind me. Yeah, I have written a book called The Farvithia Chronicle. It's there on the screen, thanks to Sammy. It's available on Amazon, hardcover, and ebook. Excuse me.
Hey,
And
Farv,
I am
you should get one of your friends to do a read of it and then get an audio file.
I don't know anybody who has enough time. Unfortunately, everybody's schedules that I know are through the fucking ceiling, ours included.
Talk to me after the show. I've actually been thinking about doing something like this.
Okay, so Bubba, hold back. Thomas, there's reasons why I will not do an audiobook. For one, I swear too much.
I would need the audiobook.
Yeah, you do not need to hear Harry fucking Potter and the Chamber of Goddamn Secrets. Like, my version of Harry Potter be very different. But fine,
And
go
Bubba,
ahead.
on the audiobook thing, just as an aside, that'd be something we'd have to discuss later, because there's a whole lot of shit
Absolutely.
I actually have to do that first.
No, I understand.
And swearing's a bad thing when you're trying to do a read of a book, Kronos.
Yeah.
But apart from that, to get us back on track, I also have a channel called Farvithian Guard, which is where
Yes.
a lot of my gaming stuff and streams and recordings is what I do with my brother. This week we have 2 episodes of Final Fantasy 16 coming up, and we have an episode of River City Girls along with the ongoing Zombie Army 4. Normally we have Bolt Gun and Atomic Heart, but with my brother kind of being sick, we've kind of put those on hold till he's feeling better.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Mr. Nobody, if you're watching from the future, feel better, buddy. And whatever Favre gives you, just be really suspicious of it.
I'm not the reason he's sick.
We don't want to have a true crime podcast about you.
You'd be about the last person that I would do that to. Thank you.
That I know. It's because you have a list.
Oh boy, here we go again.
And it's in alphabetical order. So, Bubba, anything you want to show?
You can follow me at Geek Hero Bubba on Twitter.
Well, you
I
can
don't.
also show your friends as well.
Well, I'd have to have some friends first. No, I'm joking.
Ooh.
Anyway, so if you follow me on Twitter, I frequently share a bunch of indie crowdfunded comic book stuff. Most of those people are people. If they're not friends, they're at least acquaintances. They're friends of friends. So if you're into that sort of thing,
Thank you, John.
there's all sorts of genres all over the place.
Nice. Mr. Nobody, don't touch Max's stuff. She lives in the void.
Oh. Are you both doing that now?
Yeah, she recently planted little things out her back. Just go and rip them up.
How does one plant something in the void? There's no surface.
She's magical. So, guys, so Friday we're coming back. We're talking about Helter Skelter himself, Charles Manson.
Just as a heads up, there may be a chance I don't make that one. I don't know yet. It's going to be a busy week.
I can move today.
No.
We've done it on Tuesday. No,
if
we've done
you
this
get
on
the
Tuesday.
people, what I'm saying is this week is going to be nuts because of the car thing, and bills are all on Friday too.
Nah,
so
I
I
get
don't
it.
know what the week's going to be like. If I don't make it and you have enough people, just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, this is a busy week for everyone. One of our panelists lost the internet.
Yeah.
Mahmoud, who shows up, he's after getting a job, so he's AWOL and things like that. So guys, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching. Thank you anyone for liking, subscribing. I appreciate you all. And remember, if you ever see Maxis around, please bully her.
Bully Revan. He's the one that deserves it.
Bully me and see what happens.
We get a
What?
we get a sad potato.
Oh.
Hey.
Hey, at least it wasn't
Watch
French
it.
fries.
Oof.
Hold on. I thought I had something. No, if you bully me, I end up being a disabled potato.
Oh.
If you kill me,
Heck,
I
you
end up
have
being a
that
heavenly
image.
potato.
Oh.
Or if you tickle me.
Now, see, that's just strange and unnecessary.
That
Da,
one's
da,
fucking...
da, 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 da. Boo, boo.
Okay, then. Whatever you say there, bud.
No matter how you slice it, he's still a dictator.
Exactly. So, guys, God bless. Have a nice night. And remember, if you're going to be on the True Crime Podcast, at least make it interesting. I mean, if you're going to be the subject of one. Okay.